Good morning. You're listening to WPVM FM in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7 on your dial. This is the BLAINESWORLD Show, and we're heard each Wednesday at 9 a.m., and you can also watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Olivia Onderlinde.
Okay.
I almost
Yep.
have it. Okay, thanks. And Olivia, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So if you're watching, that's Olivia. And Olivia has lived in Asheville for the last 5 years, and she's been with Manna for 2.5 years. Previously, she worked for the American Red Cross and Blood Services, coordinating area blood drives. When not working, Olivia enjoys a busy and happy life with her husband and their 1-year-old son, Brooke, and their family pooch. Are we going to see the family pooch today, or is he going to...
Oh, probably not. He's sleeping already.
Okay, good. Past his bedtime. They especially like hiking and being outdoors. And the question, Olivia, I always ask guests for the first time is, you grew up where as a kid?
In the middle of Michigan.
Okay. And growing up in the middle of Michigan, did you always know you wanted to be working for a food bank?
No, I did not, but I'm really glad this is where I ended up. I've worked for nonprofits my entire career, and I think they've all kind of led me to working for Manna, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. Just getting to work with our community in such a special way.
What was the first nonprofit you worked for?
United Way. I've worked for a couple of United Ways actually, all within the fundraising, all within fundraising roles that I've done for nonprofits.
Okay, now, is that, I guess, one of your primary roles with Anna, the corporate engagement manager? What does that mean?
Yeah, so my role is I get to work with the awesome businesses we have here in town and get them connected to what we're doing in the community. So whether that be through financial donations, um, whether that be through food donations or volunteering, I kind of help coordinate all of that with our awesome businesses. So I run a couple of internal campaigns as well with businesses. We do a campaign with the brewery industry called Hops for Hunger. We do an awesome campaign with the hotel industry called Sweet Dreams Full Plates. And then the other one that I manage is a newly launched campaign that we just launched in 2020 called Closing on Hunger. And that's where I work with the real estate community, all to raise more money for Manna so that we can help our neighbors in need.
And talk about that last one, because I think I know maybe a little bit about the first two, but what was
Yeah.
the tie-in to the real estate community? How does that work?
Yeah. So the idea for this campaign was that we take the month of October and we get realtors and realty firms in town to participate. And the idea is with every house closing that they do in the month of October, they make $100 donation to
Very cool.
Manna in honor of their client. And so then we send their client a lovely thank you letter. It welcomes people into the community in a philanthropic spirit, which is really fun.
And I get chilly even as you talk about it, because the other advantage I see is that the people also are learning about Manna at the same time too. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, I learned about Manna several years ago. I was in Leadership Asheville, and I was always
Oh,
impressed.
yeah.
We took a tour. By the way, have
Uh-huh.
you done that yet, Leadership Asheville?
No, I haven't, but there are several people at Manna who have.
Well,
It's a great program.
put it down next year. Seriously, try to get
Yeah.
into it. It's a great program. But what's so impressive for me was we actually spent a day at Manor. I don't know
Yeah.
if they still do that, but it's just really
Yeah.
got it. They still do that?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
Because it really made me aware of Manor, but I had already been in the community maybe 2 years or something. So here,
Mhm.
for people to come on board when they first come to town, that's really great. They should know
Yeah.
about it. And talk about Manor then. In other words, one of the great things I think you have working for that organization is that, at least to me, Manor has a really good reputation. It's like, you name an organization in Asheville and you'll hear something wrong about it or somebody will complain about it. But for the most part, I think Manor has this reputation that it's pretty well accepted, would you say, throughout the community?
Yeah, absolutely. We think of ourselves as a community organization, that we are a part of this community. We couldn't do what we do without our community, for our community. Our donors, our volunteers, they carry us through this work. And so we work really hard to make sure that we're stewarding every single resource, to the best of our ability, and then really just serving our clients with hope and dignity, and encouraging our partner agencies to do that as well.
And talk about Manna with respect to something I did when we first moved here. But if people are experiencing hunger, and let's first of all just talk about how big a problem is hunger in Western North Carolina, if you would.
Yeah, food insecurity is a huge issue in Western North Carolina. And the pandemic, we're still, coming through the pandemic, but really exploded the need even more. And so we are currently still serving over 56% more people than we did in the 2019. So, at least 1 in 6 people in Western North Carolina and 1 in 4 kids is food insecure, just meaning they're not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. So, it's a huge issue across the mountains. And we want folks to know that we have food resources available. And so, our partner agencies are incredible. We do some direct distribution ourselves at Manna. And we've got food for folks.
And what you said, just that figure, I hadn't even been aware of that figure. 1 out of 4, 1 out of 6, that's pretty high,
Yeah.
And that, I guess, what's important is that if you don't have food insecurity, you have no understanding, I guess, or appreciation of what people have to go through,
Yeah.
So if they live in Western North Carolina, what does a person do then if he or she doesn't know where their meal is coming from? How do they hook into Manna, and how does Manna work with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a couple of ways folks can get connected. We have a helpline, which is available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, that folks can call into and get connected to, a food pantry that's closest to their neighborhood, or to learn about where the closest distribution might be happening to them. So the helpline is a great place. You can look on our website, and we have a map of all the distributions happening across the mountains. I would say, our social medias do a really great job of listing where folks can get connected to food resources.
Just go back to one thing you mentioned. So if people are interested, first of all, just on this food pantry aspect, so there are 2 ways you mentioned. That one, they can go to the website. And the website, Olivia, is what, please?
Is mannafoodbank.org.
Okay, you spell that how?
MANNAFOODBANK.
Okay, but the Manna, it's with 2 N's.
Yes,
just
Manna,
curious.
2 N's.
Yeah, just curious. What's the idea behind the Manna? What does that stand for?
So it actually stands for Mountain Area Nutritional Needs Alliance.
Okay, but I never hear that talked about. It's always, it's like AARP did the same thing too. It used to be a Association for Retired People, but if you notice, they never use that anymore. So I've never heard Manna described any other way other than the Manna. But you mentioned, so there are 2 ways. They can go to the website, but they can also call in. And what number is that?
Yeah, let me grab that for you.
Okay,
and our social media as well is a great way to get connected. We list distributions on our Facebook and our Instagram weekly, but you can call. The number is 800-820-1190.
Okay, I'll ask you to repeat that. The number is what?
Yep, it's 800-820-1109. And then you can also send a text, and we can help connect you that way as well, if texting is, easier for folks. And that number is 828-202-9685.
And talk a little bit about then. So if somebody calls in or goes on the website, they'll
Mhm.
get information about various food pantries that are open to them. And so
Yeah, so we have
describe what happens.
we have a large network of food pantry partners that we work with. We have over 200 across the mountains. And so they hold their own distributions. And then at Manna, we also have a special program called our Manna Community Market. And we go to a different place across the mountains every day of the week, Monday through Friday, and do a farmers market style distribution. So you would be able to call into the helpline and you could just tell them where you lived, if you live in Candler or if you live in Asheville or specifically the north side of Asheville. We can tell you where one of our partner agencies is having a distribution, or we're having a distribution as well
And
to
so
get you
people
connected to resources.
so people are told to go there. Do they have to, when they go there, do they have to prove anything or do they have to bring records?
No, and definitely not at any of our Manna community markets. There's no requirements, no information you need to show. Just if you're hungry, we've got food for you.
Because,
Um,
because I
yeah,
guess the thought is that, hey, if somebody is hungry, that they're going to seek out food, you take them for their word. They're not looking to beat the
absolutely.
system.
We want people to always to serve people with hope and dignity. So we give them that dignity of they know their needs best. We aren't there to tell them what their needs are.
Well, let me kind of put you on the spot because I don't have the answer to this next question. But
Mhm.
when you see, unfortunately, there are too many people who are, are in need of food in Buncombe County, and so a lot of times you see them on the street, okay, where they'll be by exit 40, on the roads now. What's your, I guess, thinking or recommendation in terms of should you help those people? Should you help them financially? A friend of mine gives granola bars, brings granola bars with them.
Mhm.
Or, and this is what I used to do, I give them money in Manna and then refer them to go to Manna or give them a phone number to call. What's your thinking
Mhm.
on that as to if you come across somebody who's hungry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everyone can kind of, you know, decide for themselves what they feel like is the appropriate response in that situation about, what they feel how they want to help or if they want to help. Um, I like to refer folks to either 211, which is an awesome another helpline
Good point.
resource that we have in town. Or I let them know about Manna and where we have resources available. And then we also have awesome organizations in downtown Asheville who work specifically with, populations of folks who may not have a home, so our house. And so I'm sure, referring folks to those services as well is helpful.
Because my thinking a little bit back to what you're saying there is that if somebody is in bad enough shape that they have to ask for money, on the street or something, I'm taking them at their word as opposed to, question it, or it's not my job to question,
Mm-hmm.
It's just I feel for them, but I like your idea of the 211. I'll have to keep that in mind. And I like the idea if I could get them to a food bank or a food pantry, would be I'm doing them considerably more of a favor. Or, like I said, one friend gives granola bars or fruit or something as
Yeah,
to I'm making sure they're eating or something like that.
absolutely.
And it's a real problem. Talk about how things actually became almost, I guess, worse, or did they become worse during COVID? Did that jam up
Yeah.
things?
It did. Well, it changed the way we do our work quite a bit. Manna is a very volunteer heavy organization, and I would say pre-pandemic and really during the pandemic, a lot of our volunteers would fall into that higher risk category, and so we had to switch everything pretty much overnight, and we asked our high risk volunteers to stay home, and then had to make a call out to the community like, hey, if you're not high risk, we need your help to do this work. And the community showed up for us and has continued to show up for us. in really special ways for us during this time. But we've seen not only an increased need at the very beginning when folks either lost their job or their hours got reduced quite a bit. Asheville and this area are really heavy on the tourism industry, right? And so in the beginning, a lot of that industry kind of shut down. And so folks found themselves in a position where they weren't maybe, they found themselves in a position of needing food for the first time. And that was a lot of who we served throughout the pandemic. And then as we've continued to move through this pandemic, so we're purchasing more food than we've ever had to purchase before because the need is higher. But then our supply chain has been impacted as well. And so we've had to be really creative and unique as to how we're going to give food to the folks, but we've been able to meet the moment because of the community, which has been really powerful.
I like how you describe that, Olivia, in terms of a high risk, trying not to offend me as saying old people, so it's very diplomatic. Thank you for trying to think what makes somebody high risk versus old, and I think there's a correlation there somewhere. But talk about then the role of volunteers, because you mentioned that you do work with volunteers. Ballpark, do you know how many volunteers Manna uses?
We use volunteers in every part of the organization. I mean, they are the lifeblood of what we do. We could not do this work without volunteers. We have volunteers who work in our warehouse every day of the, Monday through Friday, morning shift, afternoon shift, an evening shift, to pack the food, sort the food, cull the produce. And then we also have volunteers who work on our helpline that I was talking about. We have volunteers who drive food across the mountains. We have volunteers who help in our Nutrition Works program. I mean, we have volunteers who help us in every aspect of our work. And pre-COVID, I think on a weekly basis, we probably see, close to 500 volunteers a week. Yeah.
So, and you're still seeking volunteers?
We always have kind of a volunteer need. So if folks are interested in volunteering, we'd love to have you. Individuals volunteer, groups volunteer, corporate groups volunteer, school groups volunteer. So all kinds of people.
If somebody wants to volunteer, how do they go about it?
Right. So you can just go to, mannafoodbank.org. And there's a little button at the top that says volunteer, and you just click that, and we'll get you connected. And
you'll find something for people to do? They don't have an idea. I think another problem you alluded to is you were saying about the transportation. I was just reading about this with the price of gas. That's becoming, I guess, a challenge for some people, that if they're driving, that, it can get expensive. So I guess you're always seeking drivers? Yeah, so we have a team of drivers on staff at Manna. And then we also have volunteer drivers who, we provide the trucks and the vehicles, but volunteers help us get fresh produce out to the community. And that's called our Manna Express program. And so we have a great group of Manna Express drivers who help us get the food out there. Now, you're talking about the food. Describe again for folks who aren't thinking about this. When you talk about food, I guess you're talking about all different kinds of foods and related stuff. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a super big grocery store, or that you operate. Absolutely, that's a great way to describe it. We work really hard to provide as much fresh produce, meat and dairy and eggs and bread as we can, but then we also have all of the staples. So your beans, your cereal, your rice, your pasta, anything that you would go shopping for at the grocery store. We want to be able to provide similar things to our families and individuals who need some food assistance. So our warehouse is full of all kinds of things. And that's, the very first time I saw that warehouse, I was kind of amazed. It's a pretty big facility, isn't it? It is, yeah. Do you know how big it is offhand?
I don't, but we have the two, not off the top of my head, I don't know the square footage, but we have the two, warehouses on our main campus. But because the need has been so great, we actually rent more space in Swananoa, to help us move some of that dry product and to hold some things that we can't fit in our current main warehouses. So yeah, it's a lot of space.
Okay. And so with respect to, let's talk about some of the other programs. So you mentioned a little bit about that realtor program, which I hadn't been aware of. What were the two others you had mentioned at the top of the show?
Yeah, Hops for Hunger.
I love
So
it.
we
Yeah.
partner with the brewery industry and bring breweries on board, and they either brew us a beer, and a portion of the proceeds go to us, um, or they'll pick a beer they already have, and we get $1 per pour for a month or a week or a day, whatever they decide. But it's a fun way to engage the brewery industry, and then also it informs to, when we made this campaign, it was targeted towards kind of a tourism industry, like the hotels, like, the brewery industry, although there's many locals who we love the beer industry here, but we wanted to tap into that tourism dollar that was coming into the community because, our local community supports us in so many ways already. And so we wanted to tap into that tourism. And so we made this campaign, Hops for Hunger.
Yeah, how long have you been doing it?
I think we're on our 5th year of Hops. That sounds
And
great.
we'd say it's successful?
Yeah, it's great. It's a fun way to get the breweries engaged, and yeah, I like it a lot.
Well, and so you hop around to each brewery to check out. But what I really like about it is, as we were saying before, with new people into the area, it's making the whole community aware of Manna, so that ordinarily might not be on the radar screen, but now all of a sudden, for at least 1 month,
Yeah.
they're mentioning Manna. So that was one program. What was the other one?
The other one is called Sweet Dreams, Full Plates. And we've kind of had to put that on pause just the last couple of years because of the pandemic. But we're hopeful that we'll be able to start it up again. But the idea behind that one is that hotel partners come on board for the campaign. And when a guest turns down overnight service, the hotel makes a donation to Manna. And so the idea is that your stay is helping provide food for folks in our community.
What a terrific
And we do that for the month of September.
What a terrific idea. And what I
Yeah.
love about it, like you said, it's kind of, I would say, a nice way or a hidden way to make a contribution, but it's not that you're noticing it, that either
Right.
the individual or even the hotel, it's something, it's just ordinary, they're doing what they do ordinarily, just tell people, I never thought about that. How much, I've seen that, but ballpark, how much does, if you don't use the services of a hotel to turn down, how much does that cost the hotel? Do you know offhand?
No, offhand.
But it's a couple,
But the hotel would make a $2 donation
Yeah.
to Manna. So that's 8 meals. So when a guest would turn down that service, they're providing 8 meals to the community, which is
wow.
fun.
And talk about that. That's like an incredible figure. How do you get that figure of 8 meals for $2? How does it work out?
Yeah, or we usually say, $1 equals 4 meals. And the way that we're able to do that is just leveraging every resource that we have. And we do that through our unique partnerships with retail partners. So Manna purchases food that we distribute and give to our partner agencies, but we also receive food through donations. And so that helps keep our costs down. We can also buy things in bulk, right? We have access to different products than we do at the grocery store. So we can buy really large quantities of food, which help us keep the cost down. So we're able to stretch that dollar a lot further than the average person would be able to when purchasing food.
What types of contributions of food do you get, and where do you get them
So
from?
we have really unique partnerships with Ingalls is probably one of our largest partnerships, and we operate the Ingalls Reclaim Center. So when product comes off of Ingalls shelves, it comes to Manna, and we act as their inventory system. So we scan in the product and it either tells us we have to return it to the vendor, return it to Ingles, or we can keep it. Most of the time we get to keep it, meaning that the product isn't bad or even expired. It just, when they are changing their shelves, or just a vendor changes their marketing, or that product comes off the shelves and comes to us. So we get to say, we get millions of pounds of food in a year from Ingles. And then that's one partnership, but we have a partnership with Publix and with Walmart and with Trader Joe's and with Aldi. And so we have lots of retail partners who donate product to us.
Do any of the products you get donated include paper goods? Like tissue,
Absolutely.
toilet paper.
That's one of the reasons we love the Ingles Reclaim Center so much, because it's not just food product that comes off the shelves, right? A lot of hygiene product we receive. And so if you think, if you are struggling to purchase some food, or you're food insecure, you're probably not going to have a ton of extra to be able to purchase some hygiene products. And so it's really great that we can then offer that product as well to our partner agencies and to their clients.
Do you take contributions in terms of individuals or folks who want to give like canned goods or anything like that, or if they have stuff they're not using? Do you take those kinds of contributions?
Absolutely, yes. We take food drive contributions. So that's part of my role, as I help manage when a business wants to do a food drive for us, or schools do food drives, or neighborhoods, or just individuals. So yeah, absolutely. If you have things in your cupboard that you are not using, or that you just want to donate, we happily accept donations.
Where would those donations go to?
You can drop them off right at Manna. We have a big bin that we empty multiple times a day that sits out right in front of our building. That's the best way to make the donation. Or if you see someone doing a food drive around town, there are some Ingles who have a big food drive bin that you can drop stuff in. That's a great place to do it too.
Because you're giving me food for thought, and how other viewers are getting the same kind of thought that, yeah, I do have food lying around the house, or I'm not going to eat, or whatever reason, and what a shame to not use it, or to throw it away or something when somebody wants it or needs it.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff. So let's kind of recap here a little bit. So Manna is currently seeking, I think you said volunteers. So anybody who's interested can volunteer, and you'll put them to work. Yeah. Do some people come in and have no idea what they want to do, and you kind of direct them in different ways they could help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Do they have
And well, I was going to say, every day in the warehouse looks a little bit different based on what food we're going to have in. Like today, the groups were going through and culling bananas.
Oh.
Well, we didn't have bananas yesterday. We had sweet potatoes yesterday. So you never kind of know what you're going to get into in the food bank. That's always fun, and it's always helping people.
Something you said is really cool, because it is true, and I've seen it not only Manna, elsewhere. But let me just ask you to talk about that final point you said about the idea. It's not only fun, but it's rewarding for people. That. And I don't know about you, but I tell people, if they say they're depressed or they say they're bored, hey, do something for somebody else, And just talk about the process, I guess, as you see it when you're in the warehouse or elsewhere, that people seem to be enjoying what they're doing.
Absolutely. I think it feels good to, give back to your community. It helps you feel connected. But also, yeah, a lot of companies will come and it builds morale. It's a fun way to use your talents to help the community.
Is there an age restriction in terms of volunteers?
Not really.
Like youngest you have with their parents?
Yeah, I think I've seen a 4 or 5-year-old.
Oh, really? Cool.
A 4-year-old baby. As long as they can pick something up and move it, we're ready for them.
Okay. But the 4 and 5-year-olds don't do any of the driving, is that correct?
No.
Oh, okay. But I mean,
we don't give them the license just yet.
Okay. But I'm saying they would come with their parents, though, right? And
they can come with their parents.
You have high school and college students come.
Absolutely.
What's the oldest volunteer you have?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Approximately.
I mean, we often say you can come from 4 to 104. So I don't know who our oldest volunteer is, but if you want to be there, we're happy to find something for you.
Great point. Olivia, if you could again just repeat contact information. If people want to find out more about Manna Food Bank, what are their best bets?
Yeah, the best place would be our website, which is mannafoodbank.org. And you can watch our socials, so our Instagram, which is just Manna Food Bank, or our Facebook, Manna Food Bank, to see what we're up to in the community and how you can get engaged.
Okay. Thank you very much for being my guest. It's the first day power on the Blaine's World Show. I'll say Olivia. I'll have you pronounce the last name. I don't want to mess it up. Your last name?
Onderlinde.
Onderlinde. Thank you very much, Olivia, and hopefully we'll see you in the near future. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and as Olivia works her way out of the studio, I'll have her kind of disappear, or there she goes. And as my next guest works his way into the studio, if he's listening, let me mention that, hey Jack, let me just mention you're listening to the Blaine's World Show on WPVM, and our mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. They can do so by giving to the website at wpvmfm.org and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. My next guest is Dr. Jack Allison, and Dr. Allison is an emergency medicine public health physician, singer-songwriter, and author of The Warm Heart of Africa, an outrageous adventure of love, music, and mishaps in, how do you pronounce it, Jack?
Malawi.
Malawi. He is graduated of Warren Wilson College, UNC Chapel Hill, UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health, and UNC School of Medicine. And so, Jack, the first question I ask, you grew up where as a kid?
I grew up, as we say in the South, all over hell and half of Georgia.
Okay.
I was born in Baltimore, and I was a war baby. But my heritage is North Carolinian on both sides of the family, my parents and grandparents. But I was graduated high school in Florida. So I'm not kidding. I was in 17 schools by the time I was in the 7th grade.
Wow, that is up there.
Yeah.
Going to all those schools, did you always know you wanted to be a doctor?
Yeah, I did. I had a fantasy, but I just didn't know if I could do it. I come from a fairly poor family, and we just didn't have the means in terms of my parentage and their help in getting me through all of that stuff. So yeah, it worked out for me, but I had to work for it.
So you knew in the back of your mind you wanted to be a doctor, but before you became a doctor, you were also in the Peace Corps, is that correct? You joined the Peace Corps?
Yes, I was.
So
Yeah.
when did you join the Peace Corps? After college?
Yeah, immediately after college. I was graduated from Chapel Hill in June of '66. And I worked during the summer. I actually got to go to Europe with the UNC Men's Glee Club. And Blaine, before we went to Europe, we were actually on the Ed Sullivan Show. So I know you're old enough to know that, and being a New Yorker, you know about Ed Sullivan, right?
Well, I think my grandparents may have told me. No, I'm just kidding. Wow, that was an exciting as a kid. So you were on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Yeah, it was.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So you appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. So what got transition then out of going to school, becoming a star on the Ed Sullivan Show? What got you into the Peace Corps?
Well, I was having a hard time deciding what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I had a fantasy. I thought about being a minister, and I got accepted to seminary, and quite literally, it scared the hell out of me, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be a doctor or a minister. And so I decided to join Peace Corps and let that sort itself out. It would give me 2 years to weigh those options. And I was tired of undergrad. I did 5 years of undergrad. After 2 years at Warren Wilson, I went on to Chapel Hill. Back in my day, Blaine, Warren Wilson was a junior college. It was a 2-year school. So all of us who finished there I think 85% of us went on to quote unquote from junior college to senior college. And that's what I did.
And so you graduated, and then what what got you into the Peace Corps though? You saw an ad for it, or you just went to a program? How did you choose it?
Good question, because there was a woman on campus at UNC. Her name was Queen Anne, and we all Anne Queen, and we all called her Queen Anne. But she was a little bit older. She was savvy, and she was the biggest recruiter for the Peace Corps, I think, in the Southeast. And I had a lot of sessions with Anne, and she helped me sort it through. And you have to apply, you have to have a medical exam and all those kinds of things. And what the FBI actually goes around and checks your background. I didn't know if you knew this, but the way that they used to do it is they used to go to people's old girlfriends and boyfriends to find out what kind of dude or dudette you were.
Really? Wow.
And so I made the cut. And, you know, Peace Corps is a 2-year hitch, Blaine. But I actually ended up staying for a 3rd year because I had such an enchanted experience in Africa. And a big chunk of that was my music.
Now, were you at the same location all 3 years?
Yes, I was.
And so, we'll talk about the music in a second. But aside from the
Okay.
music, what else were you doing in the Peace Corps?
Well, our job was a new one in Malawi. We, not one of us was a physician at the time. And we were all what they called AB generalist. We had Bachelor of Arts degrees, and we ran what's called an under 5s baby clinic. So it was my job to take care of babies in the public health sense from age 0, you know, birth until up to age 5. And back in our day, we were allowed to give the kids immunizations.
Wow.
And we taught mamas about boiling drinking water. I worked with the men about building and better latrines, building soak pits so that you didn't have standing water for mosquito propagation. We help people with animal control like rats and mice and those kinds of things. So it was a challenging job, and it was the most worthwhile job I think I've ever had.
I mean, think about this. I mean, I am. What a phenomenal first step into a career. You know, here you're a kid, you graduate college, not sure what you're going to do, and all of a sudden you go into this environment, which seems like you're doing everything. You know, it's just, and also what a great way to get a background for medicine and for becoming a doctor. You saw so much stuff, I guess, in those 3 years. It was just incredible.
You're really sensitive to that because it's so accurate. And my boss was he was very comparable to a PA here, a physician's assistant. They called them medical assistants, the same darn thing. But he knew I was interested in medicine. So whenever he had a juicy case, he would send somebody around to my side of the clinic where I was taking care of the babies. And he would say, Jack, you've got to see this one. So I would go around and get to watch him do stuff. And then he let me do stuff. So he let me pull teeth. And he, I mean, he did everything for the people in the village and the surrounding villages. And it was quite an experience for me.
The amazing thing also about this experience, as you talk about it, is that I guess you also had to learn another language. And from what I was listening off the air, it sounds like you learned the language pretty well. What language was that?
Called Chichewa, and it's a variant of Swahili, if you will. It's a Bantu language. And believe it or not, Blaine, after 50 some odd years, I'm still fluent in conversational Chichewa. And it just freaks people out because I'll go back and, you know, it takes forever to get through the lines when you're entering the country. You know, you have to go through passport control, then you have to go through customs. And so I just start shooting the breeze with high-fiving it with the Africans. And they always look at me like, oh my God, here's this guy with a red neck speaking Chichewa. What the hell's going on?
Well, prior to that, had you been good in languages?
Ah, not really. I took a little Spanish in my senior year of high school. I had 2 years of French. When I got to college, I took 2 years of French, and then I took 2 years of German. And when I actually trained to go to Nigeria, so I had 3 months of Igbo before I actually got seconded to go to Malawi. I don't know if you remember, they had a civil war in Nigeria,
Right.
and the eastern part of the country seceded, and it was called Biafra.
Okay,
And
sure.
I was going to be going to Biafra, and that's the language I learned. And so, when I knew I was going to Malawi, that's when I really put my head down and really tried hard. And every day I studied the language, and my counterpart helped me. And, that's why I scored so high on the exam when I left the country.
So, what's funny, you were telling me off there, you still speak that, or you still
Oh,
speak the language, and we'll give a shout out to another person not on the air. We mentioned him, our first guest. It's her boss, and talk about how you still practice language with the person we're talking about.
Chad Conady is really a prince. You've met him before. He's a tall drink of water, and he does a lot of the fundraising for Manna Food Bank. And Chad, believe it or not, I feel so good about being connected with Manna. And I wanted to let you know that we're going to talk about my music, but you've mentioned my book. The Warm Heart of Africa is the name of the book, and I'm giving away all the proceeds from the book, as we've done with my music. The first $1,000 I gave away from the sale of my book, I gave it to Manna Food Bank locally. So there's a deep connection there with us.
And what was the other connection I thought was fun, you were telling me, is that you get to practice this language every time you speak to Chad over at Manna Food
Oh
Bank.
yeah, he and I carry on.
And so let's now talk a little bit about some of the other things that you're involved in. So when you're in the Peace Corps, which is kind of cool, you are doing all this medical assistant type stuff, but you also were into music at that time too, right? You started writing songs and singing songs?
Yeah, what happened, Blaine, is that it was a new program for the Peace Corps, and they wanted us at the end of our first 3 months, they wanted us to go to a modest resort on Lake Malawi. And they wanted us to do show and tell. What are the goods, the bads, and the uglies of your getting this program off the ground? Well, there was a volunteer that lived 10 miles south of me, and she was really good at drawing. And even though I became a physician, I'm pretty good with penmanship, believe it or not. And so she drew a great big poster with a fly on it. And I wrote in Chichewa, brush the flies out of your baby's eyes to prevent eye disease, to prevent pink eye.
Sure.
Well, we went to this conference, and I was lying in a bathtub, and I had the darn water up to here. It was my first tub bath in 3 months, and I was taking advantage of it. But in my mind's eye, I was looking at that poster, and I started putting the words with a tune, and all of a sudden I came up with a song called Brush the Flies Out of Your Baby's Eyes, and it was in the local language. Well, I jumped out of the tub, pulled on my bathing suit and t-shirt, ran down on the beach. There was a woman down there who had a cassette player. Remember the old cassettes
Sure.
from the mid-'60s? I borrowed a cassette player with an empty tape, and I went on down the beach, and I hummed my song into the cassette so that I wouldn't lose it. 2 weeks later, I met up with the best Black band, African band in Malawi. And I said, hey, you guys, how would you like to record this song, and we could put it on the radio and get the word out? Well, that song was really popular because they could tell that I am a European. Anybody white in Malawi, it doesn't make a darn where you're from. If you're white, you're a European. That's what they call us. And so on the way home, I wrote Ufa Wantedza, the peanut flour song, and then it became the number one song in Malawi for the next 3 years running.
And so who recorded that? You did? You also
Same
did?
band.
Oh, the
They
band.
were called the Jazz Giants.
And by the way, I have to apologize
Yeah.
that we're not going to be able to play the music. But Jack, talk about if people want to hear this music, and next time we have you on board, we'll actually have people hear the music. How do they find the music that you've written?
They can go to my website, and it's all one streaming word. Write out drjackallison.com, and they can find Ufa Wantedza. They can also find a song I wrote last year. It's a anti-COVID-19 song that I did for Malawi, and it too is in Chichewa. So I told you I still speak the language, so I did that as well.
Well, talk about your music. So you've written X number of songs in this language. Have you written any songs in English as well?
Yes, I sent some of those to Cappy as well, your
Right.
producer. I did 4 songs back in the day for Planned Parenthood of Greater Charlotte, and after I did the first 3, I got some feedback from women saying, "Hey, you're putting all the onus on us. Why don't you write a song for men?" So I wrote one called "If You're Thinking About the Birds and the Bees, Think Vasectomy." and there's a tone poem behind it. The mood goes doo 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 doo. So the spermatozoa are swimming around. So
So,
but
was that a number one? Was that also a number one hit in the?
no, it was popular for a week, and I don't know if I should get into religion, but I thought one a group that's definitely anti-abortion,
Right.
I thought they would come after me first, but it wasn't. It was the Southern Baptists. They called up the station and said, "Hey, these songs are offensive." The first one I did was an emotional appeal to mamas. If you cannot love a child, why bring him into the world? If you cannot feed a child, why bring her into the world? There are many ways of living and loving,
Sure.
and freedom night and day. So protect yourself, respect yourself, the family planning way.
I love it.
Well, that was offensive to them. So what the heck? You do your best. I wanted to let you know last week, my latest song is called Circumcision. And I'm dealing with a new program through the Peace Corps. It's called the Virtual Service Project. I got seconded to South Africa. It's all done online. And I'm dealing with HIV/AIDS. So I wanted to show you, I don't know if you can see this.
Sure. Yeah.
It's an album called Nyimbo za AIDS, Songs About AIDS. They've asked me to send them, 3 of the songs are in Chichewa, 3 of the songs are half in English and Chichewa. I'm sending them their album, and they're going to translate that album into 9 different South African tongues, and they're going to get the word out about HIV/AIDS. And the song I wrote is in English, but I've given a shot at trying to, because I do speak Chichewa, and the language Zulu is a Bantu tongue. I looked up the words that I wrote in English and translated them into Zulu, and I'm going to see if I can get that song recorded both in English and in Zulu and send it to the South Africans. I don't want to be the star for this. I want them to use the music and get it re-recorded, by somebody famous in South Africa, to get the word out. There is a cultural rite of circumcision for young men in South Africa. And what I'm making a plea is, I don't want to take the cultural rite away in terms of the stuff that goes around it, but I think that the circumcision ought to be done by doctors and nurses. Circumcision the proper way. Go ahead.
With music, do you prefer writing in English or in an African language?
It doesn't matter, because I've written a song in Swahili called Hasa Twiga, and it's a 1-minute song to try to protect the giraffes, asking people, don't kill the giraffes, don't eat bush meat, don't eat, country meat. Protect the animals, especially giraffes.
How many songs have you written, ballpark?
I think I know I've done 125. I may have done 130. I'm sort of losing count, but I've recorded over 100 of them. And I've made over $167,000 with my music, but my wife and I have given away every cent of those monies to various organizations in need. I showed you my AIDS album. Back when I did that in 1994, 95, we actually raised over $30,000, Blaine, and we used those monies to help feed African children who'd been orphaned because their parents had died of AIDS. Mm-hmm. So when you get money to the village level, you can cause small miracles to happen.
Now, with your music, which I find incredible, is the fact that you write the words, but you also write the music. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now,
yes.
Do you have a background in writing music, or had you ever studied it?
Well, I took 2.5 years of voice in college. I took 2 years at Warren Wilson. I took another semester at Chapel Hill. And I actually worked my way through college and med school. During my stay at Chapel Hill, I was actually in a band called the One-Eyed Jacks. And it was a rock band, and I was the lead singer, and I played lead tambourine. So every time we had a show, the next day I would roll out of bed and my thighs were bruised from pounding the tambourine on my thighs. But I also sang in church. There was a Presbyterian church 35 miles away in Burlington, and I was the tenor, soloist, and sectional leader. The weird part about that, I sang in church for 3 years, and I sang in the One-Eyed Jacks for 6 months. I made more money singing rock and roll in 6 months than I did singing in church for 3 years.
Do you still sing?
I still sing. I still record the music I write.
Yeah. And so talk about that process. Are you still writing then music? Do you do that every day?
Yes, I am. And I have a dear friend who lives out in Leicester, and we went to Chapel Hill together. He became a computer engineer, but he's a better musician than I. And what I do is I get together with him and I tell him, this is my song. These are the words, this is the music. And we work it out together, and he puts down the background behind me, and I help to give him hints about what's in my head. I want a dark note here. I want a modulation there. This is what I have in mind for the drum beat. See what you can come up with, that kind of thing.
It seems all your music, or at least what you've talked about, ties into, I'd say, positive causes or things that are good for the community. As you're talking about the medical stuff you've done, the other stuff. Is that primarily your thrust in writing music?
Yeah, I got my start doing health education songs and jingles. I did a song for the Western Carolina Medical Society. They have a program called Project Access. And so it's for people with lesser means to provide medical care for them. So I wrote a jingle for them. That's what I've done locally. So I keep doing it, Blaine.
but what I'm saying, what I'm very impressed with, Jack, is that the
Thanks.
music you're writing is of benefit to somebody, you know, as opposed to, writing, it doesn't sound like you're writing lots of rock songs or, for rock bands. It's mostly for society, or to better society overall. And let's go back to the book then. So when did you write this book?
I wrote the book 2 years ago, and it was published in June. Let me look. I think it was published in June of 21, but no, 20. I wrote the book as a memoir of my 3 years in Africa in the Peace Corps and how that experience impact the rest, of my personal and professional life. As with my music, we're giving away all the proceeds. And today I wrote a check to the North Carolina Peace Corps Association down in Durham, and that's my fifth $1,000 check that I've written from sale of my book.
How do you like writing a book? In other words, it seems like you've done about 73 different things in your life. How was writing a book for the first time? Did you enjoy that?
Well, it's not the first book I've written, but it's the first. All the other stuff I've written, Blaine, is being medical.
Gotcha.
So I was an academic emergency physician most of my career, and that entailed doing research and publication and writing books and writing journal articles and, scientific stuff. When I wrote the first chapter, I hired a woman as a writing coach, and she said, send me a chapter. And when I sent it to her, she called me and said, Jack, this is a memoir. This is not a scientific journal. You need to loosen up a little bit, dude. And so I really had to change my tenor and tone. You always want to write the truth, but it's different from writing scientific stuff.
Sure. And let me jump in here a second. We're running up against the clock. Talk a little bit about your work now too. You're also working with another musical, we'll say legend in this area, and that's B.J. Liederman. And what are you doing with B.J.?
B.J. is a mensch. I approached him because I wanted to see if he could get one of my songs published. It sounds incongruous, but this song is called America's Heroes. And it's a song. I used to be chief of staff here at the VA in Asheville. I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and then I helped to take care of vets. And again, I wrote this song, and it and another album I did raised over $11,000, and we gave those monies away to help vets, especially homeless vets. So what I wanted to do is see if BJ could help me get somebody famous to re-record America's Heroes and see if we could make some more money, and I will give it away.
Okay, I'm hoping, I don't know if we can get BJ to do it, but I'd love him to. I don't know if he's interested, but he's quite a talented singer, musician, mensch, as you said, so that's just really cool you're working with him. I think you chose the right guy to do it. Jack, if folks want to get more information about you, either about, especially some of your music, best bet again is go to the website.
Go to my website, all stream one word, doctor spelled out, drjackallison.com, or my email address is eja1621@aol.com, and I'm on Facebook under the aegis of Jack Allison.
Okay, and certainly a very talented guy. And Jack, when we get you again next time, which we will do, we're going to figure out, we want to hear some of your music because it's just, I'm so impressed with it. And after the show, I'll go to the website to look at it. So thanks for being my guest this second half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. Also to Olivia Onderlinde being my guest the first half hour, Cappy Tuzzetti, my producer. I look forward to having you join us next Wednesday here at 9 a.m. on WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. And Jack, again, thank you very much. I look forward to hopefully someday actually seeing you in person.
Thank you, sir. Me too.
You be well. Okay, so we're going to sign off, and